For 5 years of marriage, my husband and I have had a silent understanding when he takes his secretary on vacation. I quietly send him a brand new travel set when he says he's sending medicine to a sick colleague. I see the latest birth control order on the food delivery app and go to the hospital for an abortion when I mention buying new insurance. He signs the divorce agreement without hesitation with 3 days left of the cooling off period. I threw away the last thing in the house that had anything to do with Kellen, our wedding photo, with that the memories of these 5 years were completely erased. When Kellen returned from his trip, the organizer I'd called was in the process of tossing my engagement ring into a nearby cardboard box. Before he could speak, I explained that the drawer was too full and I was just tidying up. Kellen didn't suspect anything and pulled a velvet box out of his pocket, handing it to me. "See if you like it." I didn't take it, and the man frowned impatiently. "I just sent Esme some medicine, and I told you in advance. What are you making a fuss about?" I looked calmly at my husband. "Just a second ago, he texted me saying his secretary had a high fever and needed to go to the hospital, and the next second a push notification popped up on my food delivery app showing that he had placed an order. It was a 2 a.m. order, a sexy nurse outfit with fishnet stockings. It was definitely hot enough to cause a fever." Seeing that I wasn't saying anything, Kellen simply tossed the box aside. The velvet box fell to the ground, and a familiar necklace rolled out. I'd seen it in Esme's social platforms, a gift that came with a Patek Philippe watch. Should I thank my husband for involving me a little when he was giving $1 million watch to another woman? Kellen put his hands in his pockets and said impatiently, "Just say what you want. The company's annual dinner is tonight. Don't show up with a dead face." Since Kellen joined this company, he had invited me to attend the annual dinner as his date every year, even after Esme appeared. I used to take it as proof that he still loved me, but not long ago, I found out that Kellen was just trying to create a loving husband persona in front of the company's boss, and I was just his tool and means to climb the corporate ladder. I bent down and took out a stack of documents hidden in the drawer of the coffee table and calmly said, "I saw an insurance policy the other day and thought it was pretty good." Kellen looked at the words maternity insurance on the cover and sneered, "Do you need this? We've been married for 5 years and I've never gotten pregnant." At first, Kellen would defend me in front of his parents and would patiently coax me whenever I was down, saying that these things couldn't be rushed and we up to fate. But now he was mocking me with a look of contempt, attacking my most vulnerable point. I clench my fists. "My face, come, you sign it, and I'll go to the annual dinner with you." Kellen seemed to want to say something else, but his phone rang. At that moment, the ringtone was one he had set up specifically for Esme. He glanced at me, turned his back, and answered the phone. I lowered my eyes, and although I didn't want to listen, Esme's CSH voice came into my ears in fragments. The man patiently coaxed her for a few words. It was completely different from his attitude towards me. "I don't know what Esme said, but Kel's attitude became urgent, and he got up and walked out. I quickly grabbed him. "Sign first." The man frowned, took it, and without even looking at it, flipped to the last page, signed his name neatly, and then strode out the door. Looking at the closed door, I felt like I was going to collapse. The aunt quickly came over to support me. "Miss, are you okay?" I shook my head and whispered, "Thank you," then opened the cover of the insurance policy. Inside was the divorce agreement I had drafted with a lawyer. The aunt asked me what to do with the box of items. I glanced at the cardboard box containing the engagement ring. Besides the ring, there were other small gifts that Kellen had given me over the years. "Just throw them away." The aunt nodded and was about to go out with the box. "Wait," I called out to her, bent down, and picked up the velvet box containing the necklace and threw it into the box. "And this too, don't keep it too." As promised, I arrived at the annual company dinner hotel, where Kellen worked. Unsurprisingly, I saw Esme there, the same high fever girl from the day before. The girl was very beautiful and stood out in the crowd. Within a few minutes, 3 men had come up to chat her up. All of them were rejected without exception. Not far away, Kellen was chatting with people, but his eyes kept glancing at Esme, and he didn't even notice when I walked over to him. It was Kellen's colleague, who felt a little awkward and called out to him, and only then did the man look away. When he saw me, a trace of discomfort flashed in his eyes. He took my hand and put it on his arm. I was afraid that she would be drunk and a little girl wouldn't be safe alone. Before I could speak, Esme, who walked over gracefully, blushed and laughed. "Cody, Asley, Mr. Kellen is so Considerate knowing that I didn't have a dress to attend the banquet, he specially bought one for me, a colleague exclaimed. Hey, isn't this dress the same as Mrs. Kellen's? As soon as the words fell, I instantly felt Kellen's body tense up. I found it ridiculous that he dared to give it, and Esme dared to wear it, yet he was afraid of being exposed. It's just a coincidence, I smiled slightly easily. Brushing off the topic, it was indeed a coincidence, but it happened a little too frequently. The first time I discovered the deep relationship between Kellen and Esme was when I found a lipstick in the same shade I usually used in the gap of the passenger seat. When I asked Kellen, he said I had accidentally dropped it until I took out an identical lipstick from my bag. Kellen became angry. Yes, the little girl has just started working for a month. Is there a problem with me giving her a lipstick as a gift? Later, Kellen took Esme on a trip under the pretext of a business trip, and before leaving he sent me a message asking me what my usual travel package was. When I asked him why he wanted this, he said it was for his boss's wife, but Kellen didn't know. Esme's message came almost at the same time as his eyes sent the link to the man. And the next day, I changed all the cosmetics on my dressing table. Kellen forgot that I have a very serious cleanliness fetish. I won't take anything that others have touched. Seeing that I not only didn't lose my temper, but also helped him out of the situation, Kellen smiled at the corner of his lips. Yes, it's just a dress. My wife can change it. If she wants, I'll buy whatever she likes. In one sentence, Esme's face turned slightly white. Kellen's colleagues were all lamenting our deep love. Just then the company's boss came, overhearing this he nodded slightly and said approvingly, a man who loves his family and wife will not have poor workability. Someone joked, it seems that someone is going to be heartbroken. Kellen paused his action of holding the wine glass and realized that Esme was nowhere to be seen. A trace of unease flashed in his eyes after the boss left. The man immediately let go of my hand and called the waiter to ask about Esme's whereabouts, probably because he felt that his reaction was too intense. Kellen looked back at me and said softly, I'm afraid something might happen to her, and it would be my responsibility as her B. If anything happened, don't mind. I shook my head. How could I compete with Esme for a man who no longer wanted me? Perhaps my performance tonight pleased him. Kellen's tone softened a lot. Stay here obediently and don't wander around. I'll find her and come back. We'll go home together tonight. But when the banquet ended and I walked out of the hotel door in my thin dress, I received a text message from the man. Esme is drunk. I'll send her back first. Wait for me in the hotel 3. I lowered my eyes, exited the interface, and directly opened the ride-hailing app. One wouldn't be stupid enough to wait on a mountain for another night. After returning home, I started packing my bags. As usual, Kellen wouldn't leave a drunk Esme alone at home, and the two of them would probably be busy all night, which would give me enough time to finish packing up the last of my things. Unexpectedly, the door was opened. A strong smell of alcohol wafted over. Kellen hugged me tightly. Why didn't you wait for me? My whole body stiffened. I tried to act as usual. I was wearing too little, and it was cold. Kellen looked at the dress I was wearing and suddenly said, the dress today wasn't the one I prepared for Esme. Yeah, whether it was or not didn't matter to me anymore. I don't know what angered the man, but his actions suddenly became rough. He easily pulled down my collar and kissed me. I'm on my period. I tried to dodge, but Kel easily restrained me. It doesn't matter. We can use something else. His voice was horror filled with a strong desire, but I just felt nauseous and wanted to vomit. Kellen touched my hand and paused slightly. Where's your ring? I knew he was talking about the engagement ring. When we first got married, we were poor, so we didn't buy a new ring. That plain band ring with our names engraved on it had always been on my ring finger until this morning when I threw it in the trash. Today's dress doesn't look good with that ring. I made up an excuse. Kellen believed it, stroking my fingers while saying, it's been so many years, it's time for a change. I'll give you a 5-carat another day. But the phone rang at that moment. I quickly pulled away from the man's arms and pulled my clothes up. Esme must have something to tell you. Kellen frowned slightly but still answered the phone. Dozens of seconds later, he hung up the phone and left in a hurry. Before leaving, he looked back at me and said, I'm afraid something might happen to her. You stay here obediently and don't wander around. I'll find her and come back. We'll go home together tonight. I nodded, but as soon as The door closed, I rushed into the bathroom and vomited over the toilet. It was disgusting as soon as I thought about Kellen and Esme rolling around in bed. I felt like the places he touched were on fire. I felt so sick that I wanted to peel off my skin. I washed myself several times before going back to continue packing, except for the divorce agreement on the table and the pregnancy ultrasound below it. There was no trace of me left in this house before leaving. I took down the wedding photo hanging on the bedroom headboard, then I mercilessly tore it up and threw it into the trash can downstairs. The 5 years of marriage were just a bubble for Kellen. Called a ride-hailing service to go to Esme's place. The cold wind blew away much of his alcohol. The house where Esme was currently living was bought by him after his promotion. He originally planned to give it to Faye as a third anniversary wedding gift. She had accompanied him from college and started from scratch, step by step, reaching $1 million annual salary. Faye had suffered a lot. He wanted to compensate Faye well, but at that time, Esme happened to have nowhere to live in. Kellen saw a reflection of himself. He came to the big city alone to make a living, barely making ends meet with a meager internship salary. He pitied her and happened to have a vacant house, so he let Esme move in first. At first, the girl would still insist on transferring 1,000 yuan in rent to him every month, which might not even be enough to rent a 20-square-meter apartment in this expensive city. Kellen found it a bit funny, but seeing Esme's serious look, he accepted anyway. Faye argued with him. When she found out about it, he just took out Esme's monthly transfer records. Look carefully, Esme and I are just a simple landlord-tenant relationship. Can you stop overthinking? Kellen felt quite innocent at that time. He really had no other thoughts about Esme. He just felt sorry for her. Isn't it natural for a beautiful girl to be pitied? But Faye was very sensitive to Esme's existence just because she made him lunch and bought him a tie as a thank you gift. It's just work. Why do you always do these things that involve your private life? Kellen was just annoyed. You don't have any opposite sex around you, so you don't want others to have any either. I've already said that we're just normal colleagues. Can you not be so sensitive? He remembered that Faye's face turned pale at that time. Later, even if he really had an improper relationship with Esme, as F said, Faye didn't say a word. Kellen felt guilty, so every time he had a relationship with Esme, he would buy Faye some gifts or take her out to eat and play. At first, Faye was very happy, but gradually, she wasn't as happy anymore. Kellen didn't like seeing her with a drooping face, and he went home less and less. The man stood at the door and finished a cigarette before entering the house. As soon as he entered the house, two slender, white arms wrapped around him. Esme's soft body was pressed against his back, but the man wasn't as distracted as before. Instead, he pulled her arms away. Didn't you say you weren't feeling well? The girl had been drinking. Her face was flushed, and her breath smelled faintly of alcohol. Yeah, I don't feel well. She grabbed his hand and slowly slid it down. Dr. Kellen, can you help me take a look? Esme giggled. See if I need an injection or medicine. Kellen looked at Esme, but suddenly F's face flashed in his mind. He couldn't help but frown. Faye was a little abnormal today. If it were in the past, if she saw Esme wearing the same dress as her, she might have taken off the dress on the spot. But today, not only did she not make a fuss, but she also lightly and casually helped him out of the situation. Kellen thought about the woman's reaction and her calm tone, and he felt inexplicably uncomfortable. He pulled his arm out of Esme's hand. If you're okay, you should go to bed early. I'll go back first. After saying that, ignoring Esme's shouts, he left directly. He called Fa several times, but no one answered. Kellen became more and more panicked, and that feeling of unease became more and more obvious. He inexplicably thought of the ring that disappeared from Fa's hand. Fa said it was because the ring didn't match tonight's dress, but no matter what kind of banquet she accompanied him to, no matter how gorgeous the dress she wore or how precious the jewelry she wore, that plain band ring never left her hand. When someone asked, Faye would just smile and caress the ring. This it's a token. It's priceless in my heart, but today she took it off. Adam's apple rolled. He looked down at his phone. It was too late, and the nearest ride-hailing service would take half an hour to get here. There weren't enough drivers assigned by the company for tonight's annual meeting. He couldn't wait any longer. He took out his car keys and sat in the driver's seat. He sped all the way But at the corner, a blinding flash of light hit him. Kel slammed the steering wheel, but it was too late. The car collided and overturned. 5 When I learned about Kel's car accident from my friends, the plane had already landed abroad a year ago. I submitted an application for studying at a fashion college abroad. It was approved 3 months ago, but at that time I was diagnosed with pregnancy. That day, I sat on a bench in the hospital corridor for a long time with the ultrasound form stud ready or give birth to this child. I gave myself 3 months to consider until 2 days ago. Kellen used the excuse of delivering medicine to Esme but turned around and placed an order on the food delivery app. I canceled the prenatal checkup that day and made an appointment for an abortion directly lying on the operating table. The moment the cold medical equipment entered my body, I thought of what happened a long time ago when I was a child. I was sexually assaulted by my neighbor next door. My father was afraid that the scandal would spread, so he didn't let me call the police. In the end, it was my mother who threatened to die that called the police. When collecting evidence, it was the same. The instrument probed into the torn lower body. I couldn't help shaking in pain. The funny thing is that the police finally got the result of the interrogation because I wore a red skirt that day. The other party believed that I was seducing him. You are so young, you dress so sad, sexy. Don't you just want men to have sex with you, officer? You can't blame me for this. I looked at the rogue face of the man through the glass window, and I felt cold all over. It was my mother and the female police sister who comforted me. They told me again and again that it was not my fault. There is nothing wrong with wearing a skirt, but the one who peeked at the skirt is wrong. Flowers are innocent when they bloom, but the one who covets the flowers is guilty. I was slowly guided out of it, but there was always a shadow in my heart. This made me always keep my head down and be cautious when facing the opposite sex. After I became an adult, until I met Kellen, he was the first person of the opposite sex I met. Unlike other boys, he was sunny, cheerful, and generous, and he broke into my life forcefully, leaving me no way to avoid it. I persuaded myself in my heart that people should always live a normal life. This is a good opportunity. So I started to try to date Kellen. He was very kind to me and took good care of me no matter how difficult things were. They seemed to become less difficult with his company. I gradually let down my guard, exposed my soft inner self, and even told him about the sexual assault I suffered when I was a child. At that time, Kellen just hugged me tightly and swore in my ear he would protect me well in the future. At that time, I was very lucky to meet a good man who was willing to accept my past, but it was not until after marriage that Kellen blurted out, "You don't have the opposite sex around you, so you insist that others don't have the opposite sex around you. Can you not be so sensitive?" I understood what the broken window effect was. Maybe from that time on, I had given up on Kellen. I was just letting myself accept and give up. To be honest, when I learned that I was pregnant, I was both scared and happy, and even had a faint expectation. Maybe this child will put our lives back on track and make Kellen return to the way he used to be. But that takeaway order was the last straw that broke the camel's back. It wiped out the last bit of hope in my heart. 6 But I didn't expect Kellen to have a car accident. I heard from a friend that he was drunk driving. He was entirely at fault for the accident. Now, not only is he bedridden, but he also has to pay a large sum of money to the other party. I didn't say anything. This amount of compensation is nothing to now, but I just couldn't figure out why he was in such a hurry to drink and drive. After hanging up the phone, I exited the interface and saw a dozen missed calls on my phone's call log. They were all from Kellen. I couldn't help but wonder if Kellen had seen the divorce agreement in the living room and then had the car accident. I smiled. How could that be? The love between us had long since been exhausted. The only thing that could make Kellen so desperate was Esme. I ignored the matter and dragged my suitcase to school to register. My college major was fashion design. I originally wanted to study civil engineering, but at the last minute my mom changed my application. Do whatever you want, don't be stuck in the past. My mom is a very gentle person, to put it nicely. She has no temper, to put it bluntly. She is a pushover, easily manipulated by others. She believes in harmony between people. She has been extremely gentle to my father all her life, but she only insisted on 2 things. One was to call the police after I had an accident that year, and the other was to apply for the major I liked. For me, everyone thought I had moved on from what happened that year, only she could see that I was still trapped in the shadow of the past. Although my sketchbook was filled with all kinds of clothes, I would always use watercolors to black them all out. After finishing them, the words of that scumbag from that year kept swirling in the depths of my memory. I wanted to design beautiful dresses, but I was afraid that what I drew would become a trigger for attracting demons. But when Kellen mocked me, I suddenly realized something. For so many years, I had imprisoned myself. The more you care about something, the more it becomes a weakness that others can exploit. Life abroad was fulfilling. I just didn't expect to see Kellen here. 7. The man sat in a wheelchair, his whole body having lost a lot of weight. His clothes hung loosely on him. When he saw me, his eyes were bloodshot, and he called out, "Helly, Faye." I paused, pretending not to see him, and walked past him with my books. He hurriedly turned the wheels of his wheelchair to chase after me. "Faye, wait for me." Carelessly, the wheelchair hit a stone, and he fell out of the chair. He looked rather pitiful. It attracted the attention of quite a few passers-by. I frowned, and after greeting my classmate, walked over to the man. When Kel saw me, a glimmer of light appeared in his eyes. "FY Kellen, what are you doing here? Shouldn't he be lying in the hospital? Even if he could be discharged, shouldn't he be cozying up with Esme?" Kellen propped himself up. "FY didn't you tell me you were coming abroad?" I looked at him amusedly. "Why would I tell you?" His face turned pale. "We married you," I interrupted the man directly. "If I remember correctly, I've already left the divorce agreement on the coffee table in the living room with your own signature on it." I looked quietly at the man's pale face and said softly, "Kellen, we're divorced." 8. The first thing Kellen did after waking up in the hospital wasn't to ask the doctor about his condition. Instead, he demanded to be discharged. Esme came over with red eyes to pull him back. "Kellen, why are you still thinking about that woman? She hasn't even called you since your accident." Kellen remembered about his phone and mumbled that he wanted to find it. "Where's my phone?" Esme cried and hugged him. "Kellen, please forget about her, okay? I'm here. I'll always be with you." But the man grabbed her shoulder tightly. "Did you hide my phone? Give me my phone." Esme was so scared by his appearance that she didn't dare to speak. "Give it to me," Kellen roared, and she trembled as she took the phone out from behind her. The man snatched it away. The screen was mostly shattered from the impact of the car accident, but it could still turn on, albeit not very sensitively. He tapped for a long time before he managed to make a call, but no one answered. Kellen dialed over and over again, ignoring even the doctor's words. Finally, with no other choice, he was pushed back home in a wheelchair. The moment he opened the door, a draft blew through, and a stack of papers on the table were blown all over the floor. One of them happened to land at Kellen's feet. The man lowered his head, and seeing the picture on the paper, his pupils constricted. It was a pregnancy ultrasound, 3 months old, with Faye's name on it. Kellen only now realized that they had a child. He started searching the house frantically, but as he searched, he realized something was wrong. Things were missing. The most obvious was their bedroom. The wedding photo that had originally hung on the wall by the bed was now gone, leaving only some faint marks, proving that something had once hung on that wall in this house where they had lived together for 5 years. There was no trace of Faye's existence left. The man leaned back in the wheelchair and gasped for breath. Then he suddenly remembered something and found the cleaning company that Faye had ordered from before. The lady said she didn't want any of her things, but I saw that there were still a lot of things that weren't broken or damaged, so I took them back. The cleaning lady took a blue velvet box out of her pocket. When she opened it, inside was the necklace he had given her. He had found it in a small jewelry store when they were traveling. At first sight, Kellen thought it was perfect for Faye. It looked simple on the outside, but it was both gorgeous and tough on the inside. He bought it later. He saw Esme take a picture of it. Kellen didn't care, but now the man didn't care about the necklace. Besides this, is there anything else? The aunt thought for a moment. There was a ring made of silver. It didn't look very valuable, so I threw it away. Kel's eyes widened, and his eyes were bloodshot. "Where did you throw it?" Theo was startled. Just in the downstairs trash, Ken, but it was a few days ago, so you probably can't find it. But he didn't seem to hear. He went straight to the downstairs trash. Ken, he still couldn't find the ring, just like their child. Once lost, it couldn't be found. 9. I don't know what Kellen is thinking either, even though I've made it very clear I still see him outside the school from time to time. I heard from a Friend that Kellen has taken a long leave of absence from his company. The position of vice president that he had been eyeing for a long time was given to someone else. Esme was even dismissed directly. Do you think he wants to come back? I was silent for a moment. Whether he comes back or not has nothing to do with me. Christmas is coming soon. This semester is almost over. I booked a flight back home. I haven't been home in a long time, and my mom made me Bowie steamed buns, especially at dinner. My dad asked why I didn't come back with Kellen. I paused before saying that we were already divorced. My dad slammed the cup in his hand on the table. Divorce? You're almost 30 years old. What are you making a fuss about? Do you know how hard it is to find a man like Kellen now? Then he turned and scolded my mom. It's all your fault you got divorced, and you even want to go abroad. How will she ever find a husband like this in the future? I frowned and shielded my mom behind me. I decided to get a divorce. Why are you scolding my mom? Besides, Kellen cheated on me. Should I continue to live with him? My dad yelled, it's just cheating. You couldn't even give birth to a child after 5 years of marriage. It's normal for him to find other women. What are you doing? I looked at him in disbelief. I couldn't believe that these words came out of my biological father's mouth. So in your eyes, I'm just a childbearing tool. Tears welded up in my eyes because I can't give birth. So no matter how Kellen mistreats me, it's normal, right? I'm doing this for your own good, for my own good. I laughed. When something happened to me that year, you refused to call the police. Was that for my own good, too? You're just afraid of losing face. I mercilessly exposed his last layer of pretense. My dad raised his hand directly in anger. You're rebelling. My daughter is going to teach me a lesson. I'll teach you a lesson today. My mom stood in front of me. You dare to touch my daughter and try. She suffered outside, and you, as her father, don't go find the person who bullied her, but instead you teach your own daughter a lesson. Jagger, are you even a man? My father's arrogance visibly subsided. You get out of my way. What? Are you going to hit me? Then hit me too. My mom overturned the table. Jagger, do you think I'm giving you face? My father shrank back and mumbled. Look at her arrogant look before. Is that the way to talk to her father? My mother impatiently said, if you like it, listen. If you don't like it, get out. Then she pulled me, who was already shocked, back to the room, leaving a mess for my father inside the room. My mom listened to me tell her the whole story. Then she patted my hand. Just make sure you've thought it through and don't regret your decision once you've made it. I nodded and hugged her. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for giving birth to me. Thank you for giving me courage and support. 3 years later, I graduated from design school. A year later, I won the gold medal at the International Fashion Design competition. At the award ceremony, I saw Kellen sitting below, looking at me expectantly, but I only glanced at him and then turned my gaze to the camera when the host asked me about my design concept. I thought for a moment. May roses bloom and skirts fly.